Do you want to see like a Kiss biopic?
I'm on the fence about it. I would rather it never happen than happen badly.
I don't want to talk much about your musical partner because he says enough on his own. But when you started getting into other things, like I called it like Gene with the ponytail in the movies, Gene. How'd you feel about that? Did you see him as being like? Remember when Keith Richards was very critical of Mick Jagger?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're in the Rolling Stones. Like, what the hell are you doing? Did you have a similar kind of reaction?
Very much. I felt betrayed.
So let's start here. I love this word, kerfuffle. Do you know this
Mm-hmm.
word? There's a recent kerfuffle about you guys playing again.
Yes.
So I just want you to walk me through that a little bit. The context being you're going to do a thing in Vegas and you guys are going to play it. Unmasked, I believe is the word you use.
Every year we did Kiss cruises.
And fans love them. I mean,
just
I know 10 people have been on the Kiss cruises. They love them.
Yeah, and
said the most fun.
The most fun, and so much fun for me and for us. Honestly, when we first were toying with the idea, I was like, "Who's going to go on a Kiss cruise?" It turned out many, and we did what they wanted. We listened and created something special. That's what we're doing in Vegas. In terms of why not?
I don't care about the why. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah.
To me, the why is when people get into that stuff in our business, they're looking at the wrong end of the telescope.
Well, also, it's a reflection of a mindset that I'm not a part of. Many people live going why instead of why not. I mean, that's that's the opening of the door. We're celebrating 50 years. There's always a reason to celebrate, but it's 50 years since the Kiss Army, and it's also a way to stay connected to our fans. The people who ask us why we're doing it are the people who wish we wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that there are people who would say, why did you continue on as a band? Well,
sure.
So it sounds like a great, fun time to keep going and to continue a tradition. It's basically a Kiss cruise in Vegas in a hotel.
Sure. I'm not a doubting person by nature because I just think cynicism is it's overplayed in American culture. So the question is not asked with
cynicism comes from bitterness.
Agreed. So I'm just curious of your mindset. Was it similar to when you guys continued after the farewell tours? It's just like it's our book to author, and if we want to keep adding chapters, it's all good.
Totally. We said that we're done touring. We're done in those personas.
Yeah.
That we shouldn't pick up instruments together. Says who?
Yeah.
We're not. And if we did, we're allowed to, but we're not going against what we said.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be on stage. I see videos and go from the last tour and go, boy, was that great. But we're not doing that. We're celebrating where we are today and our past with the fans who we love and they love us.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's a blithe way to put it, but your business model is very much its own thing. You guys have always kind of created your own ecosystem.
Always.
And it's worked very well for you. Other people it wouldn't work well for. I don't think it would work well for us. We're just wired differently.
Yeah, we've always we've always done things the way we thought they should be done.
Yeah.
Certainly in the beginning, we had less control over making those kinds of decisions. But Bill Arcoin, our first manager, he never managed anybody in his life, but it felt right.
Yeah.
And there are other cases of that happening over the years. And
This might be an unfair question to ask you because, Gene's always sort of, and Gene, when he was here and he sat in that exact same chair, I challenged him and said, in a way, you're always talking about money as kind of a weird cover for how you really feel. I'm not asking you to speak for Gene, but when people have tried to always label Kiss as being about money, I always thought they sort of missed the point. And I even challenged Gene on that. So what was always your mindset on that?
it's never been about the money. However, if there is money to be made, it should go to us.
Mm.
But
People overlook the fact of how much money you guys blew too. I mean, you guys blew it. I mean, no one's ever blown money like you guys. I mean, the production. If people really knew what that stuff cost,
we learned through mistakes, and nobody has to take up a collection for us. Our rent is well paid, but the idea of being like money hungry or anything like it's not the case. I've always done this, and we've always done this ultimately, truly, because of the joy it gives us. I was so fortunate. I grew up in an era that took us into the next era, but I grew up seeing Jimi Hendrix play for a couple of thousand people, Led Zeppelin, The Who with Buddy Guy opening in '69, Humble Pie, Derek and the Dominoes, all these bands. That's what I love, and that's what I want it to be. I never started doing this with the intention, I'm going to be a millionaire. Back then, millionaire was like, the Monopoly man, whoa, that's incredible. But it was never about that. It was about, I want to be that guy. I want to be up there.
Yeah.
I want to be Steve Marriott. I want to preach.
Who wouldn't want to be Steve Marriott?
I want to be up there preaching rock and roll, with everything.
When I interviewed Sharon Osbourne, I didn't know that she'd gone to school with Steve Marriott. So she knew him as a kid, when she was a kid. And we talked about that voice that came out of that body.
Boy, I mean, a Les Paul on him looked like a Birdland. I mean, it was, but gosh, you had to experience that live.
Yeah.
But that's what it was about for me. Yes, there's money generated, and I want it, but that was secondary, but it was important. If there is going to be money, it belongs here.
Yeah. I guess what I'm after, and I'm not doing a good job of it, is fans tend to do this weird thing. They try to make these kind of arguments. It's like it's either about integrity or money, And my argument is, but why can't it be about both? Isn't success where the artist gets rewarded for their effort and they maintain their integrity? In essence, they're executing their vision. Isn't that the ultimate win?
Totally.
Because if you don't generate resources in the music business, you won't have any power, because the people who actually control the world will put you in positions of which you don't have any choice of integrity. Does translate the way I'm saying?
Yes. And money, what money gives you is the ability to stop worrying about money. And it gives you freedom.
What was the Duke Ellington thing? I know how to make a man a millionaire. Give him $1 and he wants 10, and once he gets 10, he wants 100.
It's money. Money is a great thing, but it gives you the opportunity. I think integrity is following your compass. Doesn't necessarily mean doing the right thing always. God knows we've done some you know, we've fallen on our asses a few times, but money gives you the ability to survive that and to continue.
Yeah.
So,
Walk me through the. I'm not interested in the financial aspect of the pop house deal, but I'm interested in you know, Gene, of course, paints this rhapsodic picture of what you guys are going to do. I like to get the more practical vision of what you have. Of course, when you did the last show at Madison Square Gardens, there was the characters were flashed up, and there was a lot of chatter about that. But what's your aspirational hope for, let's call it, Kiss
mm,
in your absence?
um, firstly, what was at Madison Square Garden was something where there was some dissension or contention even among us, because it didn't represent what we were going to do. To create what we are doing takes years. And that was, rather than taking it literally, it was just the idea that we will continue on
Sure.
in another form. What do I hope? Um, that that the core of this immersive experience is an accurate representation of the band at its best. Um, because nobody can be us better than us. So if there is a way, and there is, to create something lifelike and beyond realistic, something that you buy as real, and then surround it with something unworldly, um, that that takes us into another realm, which most bands can never do. You know, we're not. You know, the idea was never um, to recreate a concert where you go, doesn't that look like a real amp? You know, it's to create something that parallels what Kiss is, which is bigger than life, and um, takes the imagination on a journey.
Yeah.
So,
It makes sense to me that there would be a posthumous life for the band, you know, it's like I always say, when I was a kid and we would watch The Wonderful World of Disney in color on Sunday night at grandma's house, we didn't know that Disney was dead. We had no idea. We thought he was a living guy
yeah,
because he was presented as this character who ran this wonderful world called Disney and Disneyland.
good point. Yeah, I think that I was part of creating Kiss, but I can also step away from it, and it lives on as
That makes, but I mean, as a fellow artist, that makes total sense to me. That, but basically, the
that.
thing.
But,
Go,
pardon
please.
me to
No, no,
interrupt,
no.
but
It's you. I want to hear from. Not
no,
me.
but doesn't that make sense? Because whether or not you're Kiss, and you can live on visually as an artist creating music, your music lives on.
Well, that's the real important thing.
Sure. So,
I'm sure that's at the heart of your desire, is like that people are going to hear these great songs.
and it's connected to these wonderful personas
Yeah.
that enhanced the experience.
Yeah.
Um,
And
some
we see it now with Star Wars and Star Trek, and you know, like there's these other lives that they didn't anticipate when they first created.
totally. You can only create within the capacity and the technology, and as that broadens,
Yeah.
other things become possible.
Um, this is just a curiosity question. I'm sure you know, the Queen movie went on to be the most successful music biopic, I think, in the history.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure people have proposed it to you. Do you want to see like a Kiss, biopic?
I'm on the fence about it. I would rather it never happen than happen badly. No, um, we don't need Kiss Meets the Phantom 2. But yeah, it would be. I would love to see it.
It almost be interesting as like like a Netflix mini series or something, if they were willing to put up the money and do it right.
Yeah.
Because, most people are going to gravitate towards the OG period because it's obvious. It has all the typical movie arcs, this and this, right? All this typical stuff that they want in a movie. But I find your middle period just as fascinating.
I have to say that the truth is far more interesting than anything that somebody could write.
Yeah.
What we've gone through, where Gene and I in particular started, because we started before Kiss.
Wicked Lester.
Yeah. And
I'm still somewhat haunted by the original She version with the flutes.
Yeah, that came.
Who knew?
That came from a time where we were just so lucky to be. We were just thrilled.
Recording at night, right? Wasn't that the thing? You would go in at night.
We would go in. We were going in in Electric Lady, which was, that's like Olympus, Mount Olympus.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah,
with Eddie Kramer.
Yes, and we would go in. Wicked Lester was with Ron Johnson, this other producer, and we would record on spec time, which meant basically that if there was an artist who was booked time from noon until 8 o'clock at night, we would show up at 7. They might go on till 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and we'd sit around for 4 or 5 hours and then go in and use that empty time.
Yeah.
So, and during that time, truly, if there was a song that came out with a banjo, we put a banjo on a song. I never heard the word euphonium. We had a euphonium, on one of the songs. It was what's hot today? Put a sitar on it.
Yeah. No one sings like you, but I know you have your singing idols. I mean, we talked about Steve Marriott. Who are some of the other singers that you thought, I wish I could sing like them?
Well, you only had to see Robert Plant in 1969 to bear witness to something where you
it's unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like you gobsmacked, but you're just trying to figure out how in the world is he doing that. Just this, and exuding this sexuality, but his voice was insane. Over the years, obviously, like everybody, the voice either deteriorates or changes. But at that pinnacle, it was...
Oh, those kind of first 4 years, 5 years, his voice is almost without peer.
Yeah.
And live. I mean, not just live in the studio.
Oh, yeah.
You hear some of the outtakes and it's the same. It's not like he fixed it in the mix.
No, what he was doing effortlessly was mind-boggling to me, because at that point, my voice didn't have a lot of range, and I couldn't figure out how he was opening that door in the back to get to that voice.
How did you figure out that upper voice in yours? Because it's very unique.
It just clicked during the 80s, and the 80s suffered for it in some ways, because all of a sudden I found this way, of getting into a head voice, a combination.
Yeah, you hit some impossible notes on those songs.
I mean, ease, just crazy notes, and not necessarily needed on those songs. But it was like, hey, I can do it.
I can do it some of that.
Yeah. So, I listen to some of that now, and I'm incredulous at those notes. But, listening to...
It's like forever, and there's like, I can hear your voice, like...
And it was effortless.
Really?
Oh, totally. I could do that for hours. I mean, we would go in the studio, and I would sing something to just... Let's do that again. Let's do that again for hours. It's an interesting story. It was an interesting time for me. I had known Ron Nevison for years, the producer, and we finally went in to work with him on an album that some people like and some people don't like. But I was thrilled to go in with him because Ron had done Zeppelin, he'd done Heart, he had done the Babies. He'd done a lot of work with really good singers, Bad Company. And I'm in there. First, I played him the demos. He said, you made my work easy because we're just going to basically copy the demos. But when I was singing and I'm thinking, he's going to take me to some place I've never been. And I said, I sang one of the songs and I said, let's do it again. And he goes, why? And I said, well, because I can do it better. And he goes, who's going to know? And I was like, it was kind of like, wah, wah. I was like, really? But yeah, I mean, Robert Plant was very, very important, as was Steve Marriott as a performer and as a conduit, as a preacher.
Yeah.
That was Noddy Holder.
Right.
Um,
Never thought about that with you, but that makes sense.
yeah, just those foghorn voices.
Yeah.
And the way I wasn't going to be out there, although we did it with Kiss, so I got a chance to do it, with just a microphone and swinging the mic. But I was going to be, I guess, more Steve Marriott. I played a guitar, so I'm going to be the guy talking. But yeah, I wanted to preach. I wanted to talk to the people in the very back row.
Yeah. Well, there's those great YouTube clips where it's just you talking.
Yeah. Possessed. Yeah.
How do you rate yourself as a songwriter? Are you comfortable as a songwriter? Do you feel strong as a songwriter? I can't think of where you've really talked about it much. Maybe I didn't see it.
I was thinking last night, and I've thought this before, that over time, over years, I became a technically better songwriter, but I will never write something as good as Come On and Love Me or Love Gun. Songs that didn't know what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Songs that came from you and weren't labored over.
Yeah.
She's a dancer, a romancer. I'm a Capricorn and she's a Cancer. I saw her picture in a music magazine when she, I couldn't do.
But you were living it too. That's a different mindset too.
Well, even before I was living it, I was fantasizing living it. I ultimately wound up living it.
Yeah.
I mean, a song like Room Service is me just going, wee, this is unbelievable. The unpopular kid is in the candy store, But so before we had that kind of attention, sure, Strutter, I saw those girls, those women on the street. They wanted nothing to do with me. They were with the Dolls or whoever, was playing at the Mercer Arts Center or going to Max's. So those kind of songs came from, I wanted to be there. I wound up there, and those were joyous songs of celebrating debauchery, but also celebrating debauchery and being.
Well, do you write the line, put your hand in my pocket, grab onto my rocket?
Yeah.
Now, I heard that when I was about 10, and I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good.
Yeah. Well, good golly, Miss Molly sure liked a ball. It's
amazing you got away with that.
Totally. But hey, Peaches and Herb, there's one perfect fit, and this one is it. And that's like a love song between, well, what are you singing about?
So were there people that you looked to teach you how to songwrite? Because like most rock people don't go to school to learn how to write songs. They listen to somebody or.
Yeah.
So who were your songwriting kind of gurus?
Basically what I was doing was hearing songs that I liked and trying to write my version. Scott Muni, the disc jockey in New York, on NEW, he had a program once a week called the British Power Hour, and he would play like the top 10 in England. I was a huge Anglophile. That was really the music that I loved. God Love Jefferson Airplane and all that kind of stuff. I had no time for that. To me, what was going on the other side of the pond was so interesting. So, for example, I heard a song called Fire Brigade by The Move.
Don't know that one.
Oh, it was a big hit over there. And, well, I couldn't find that song or afford that song. I wrote Firehouse, you know, and it's basically the same. Get the Fire Brigade, you know,
Yeah.
and get the Firehouse.
Yeah.
So I had a tendency to pattern songs on songs that I liked, and that's a good thing.
There's a lot of kind of 50s changes in your chordal work, but it doesn't sound 50s the way you do it. You put your own spin on it, but to me, chordally, there's a lot of kind of.
Well, there was also, I love great rhythm guitar playing, whether it's Richie Havens or Pete Townsend.
Richie Havens, an incredible rhythm player.
It's insane.
Do you ever try to play the way he played with the one chord and the thumb?
That thumb.
Yeah.
That thumb.
He tuned the guitar just to one chord.
Yeah.
So you basically play one finger.
Yeah. Yeah. But once, he would also.
Yeah, he'd add a little bit of.
Yeah. But Richie Havens, I mean, when Evan, my oldest, was playing guitar, I said, listen to Richie Havens, because this is great, but this is where you play guitar.
Yeah, some of those Richie Havens albums are really, really well produced.
Beautiful.
Really cool sounds.
Beautiful. So, as far as what we were talking about,
songwriters,
you get into Carole King, Jerry Goffin, you get into Barry Mann and Cynthia Will, Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich.
Yeah, I was listening. I'm sure you've done that where you hear a song, who wrote this song? And the other day I was Walking in the Rain by the Renettes, and it's Man and Wheel or Weil. I mean, what a song. I mean, still goosebumps to this day. It's like,
well, Barry Mann, I knew Barry from Electric Lady Forward, and Barry is, R&B on Broadway.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, those people, they wrote songs, man, because they understood the formula.
Yeah.
I mean, You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. That's Barry Mann and Cynthia.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that thing that oftentimes gets lost in translation with rock and roll, because the radio playlists up to the early to mid 70s were very regional. So people who grew up in the Northeast got a very different musical education than people growing up.
Yes.
Where I grew up in Chicago. And like if you listen to Tommy James, you can really hear that doo-wop influence, but then that kind of psychedelia, but it's very East Coast. And like you said, the West Coast, the Jefferson Airplane version, Buffalo Springfield, it's a very different kind of psychedelia.
Yes.
Less influenced by doo-wop and more influenced by, I guess, I don't know, people smoking weed or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Very different.
More based, I think, probably on acoustic, on the folk music.
Yeah, exactly. More folk. Yeah.
Very, very much so. That different areas had,
it just occurred to me, because harmonies are kind of a hidden thing in your music. I'm not saying it's hidden, but I'm saying there's a very unique Kiss vocal harmony style. Was there somebody you guys pattern yourselves after?
I've always loved harmonies, and one of the great things in my family was when I was growing up, all four of us, my parents, my sister, and I, we all had really good voices, and we would sing.
Oh, so you just grew up with that?
Just grew up singing innately in four-part. We sang in great harmonies, so that was always something special. The Byrds, their harmonies were fantastic, and
it's unfair when you hear those voices.
Yeah,
Crosby, Gene Clark,
there's an unsung hero.
Oh, unbelievable! One of my favorites all time.
Me too.
Did you ever listen to the stuff he did after he left the Byrds? That early country
some of
rock?
It got a little, little out there, but
But him with Dillard and Clark, and there's some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So, because your history in music is so oft explored, I just want to kind of tangentially touch on it because there's almost no way to express it. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of do it this way. So if we break your life into these 4 eras that I've somehow made up my own version that you have 4 eras of music. I thought, okay, with the original band, take me to the moment in your life when you're standing on stage somewhere and you think like, wow, this is really going to work. Is there like a specific show or specific?
Yeah, I think it was Dayton, Ohio.
I love it.
Yeah, and we were playing. We could do 14 shows in a row, whatever.
Were you on one of these package tours where it's like you and Rush and was one of those?
Rush did their first tour opening for us. Everybody, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were our.
But I'm saying,
yeah,
those were the times where there was all these shifting bills.
Yeah, but we were. I would always say to our road manager before the show when we were getting ready, "How are we doing?" And what that meant was, how are ticket sales?
Any empty seats. Yeah.
And I remember, "How are we doing?" Sold out. Oh, cool. And then next night, "How are we doing?" Sold out. And it's like, and then I'm going, do I sense a pattern here?
Yeah.
And I remember before we went on, I was all made up and ready. And we had a curtain, like a kabuki. And I went out and looked down. And I was like, oh my God, this place is packed. And that's when I thought, wow, this is happening. I always thought of it analogous to, you're on the roller coaster and you're being pulled up, and sooner or later suddenly, you better hold on because this is going to get pretty tricky.
My sense of it at the time, and I was young, was you were as hot a band in that period as any band has ever been in the history of rock and roll. Was that how you felt or saw it?
You're in this, you're in the eye of the hurricane. So,
but that was a pretty fierce hurricane.
Yeah. I was certainly aware. I think more so that we were on a crusade. We were taking no prisoners, and we were just going. We were going to conquer the world, and that's really more that than the impact we were having. By Destroyer, then I was aware that this is out of control. This is massive. But before that, I was more committed to the outcome that we wanted.
Yeah. Was it as simple as we want to be the biggest band in the world? Was that something you would say? Or I know it sounds silly to say it, but I used to tell my band we're going to be the biggest band in the world because I needed to believe in something.
I think we did the same. I think that's probably a cliche, but I think that it's something that you aspire to.
Yeah.
If it's up here and you reach here, that's okay, but you have to aim for there.
Yeah.
So, I remember when we first got together with Bill O'Coin, our manager, who became our manager, and he didn't have a pot to piss in and never managed a band, but it was meant to be. And he said, if you don't want to be the biggest band in the world, I don't want to manage you. And it was like, that's our man,
there's the guy.
That's the guy, and I think naivete is a good thing if it's coupled with determination.
Mm-hmm.
If you just think you can will something to happen or imagine it, if you have a objective, and if you want to get to that end of the field, you don't see the obstacles.
Yeah.
You just keep looking there.
Yeah, I feel like if you knew how hard it was, it would mess you up. You almost have to believe it somehow.
Totally.
It's like a magical spell or something that happens.
Totally. I often thought, if I knew how long it was going to take me to feel I was a good guitar player, I never would have picked up the guitar.
So there's these kind of, I don't know, funny is not the right word. there was these interesting moments because, like I said, in my impression, and I was at least there and I was watching. Uh, my impression was this band is as hot as the Beatles were. You would hear about the Beatles in the '70s, but you guys were like the living embodiment of what that like Beatlemania felt like. At
Mm-hmm.
least that's what it felt like where I was
Mm-hmm.
growing up. But then you have these weird cultural moments of like Kiss meets the Phantom,
Mm-hmm.
and I oftentimes think of the you guys on was it Tom Snyder
Mm-hmm.
where
Where Ace was,
Ace just goes off,
yeah.
and you could almost I'm maybe I'm projecting, but
No,
I just see you guys' faces like, oh my god, what's happening?
it's somewhere between panic and anger and anger.
I would say more anger.
Yeah. 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 Yes, we reached a point where in Australia, when we went there in 1980, it was pegged as Hysteria.
Well, that was Shandy was a huge hit.
Yeah.
Right?
And,
you guys played like crazy crowds.
Crazy crowds. And we were locked in the hotel, and we would have these wild parties every night, where the promoter would invite every female celebrity, actress, newscaster, and leave your boyfriends home. So yeah, we lived that where we had the whole floor of a hotel, and then you can only get out of the hotel if you lay on the bottom of a truck. And we did the same thing in Japan when we broke the Beatles record
Wow.
for concerts at Budokan. So yeah, we were aware, but I was never delusional in the sense of comparing us to the Beatles. Let other people do that. It's an insane comparison.
I just mean it because
in terms of the adulation and that fan veracity.
Sure.
Yeah, it certainly existed, and from time to time, bands have that.
Yeah, I just mean it through the prism of very few bands cross into the culture,
Mm-hmm.
where it becomes a cultural phenomenon, not just a musical phenomenon.
Well, that's I say, bands make music, phenomenons impact society.
Right.
And it's kind of that simple.
So, skipping to the next era, we'll call it the makeup off era. What was the internal logic? Like, we've taken this as far as it can go, or what was the internal thinking?
Survival. We reached a point where I felt that people were listening with their eyes. And
sorry, I got to stop you because this blows my mind. Okay. So I went to one of these AI ChatGPT Grok type of things, and I said, list for me the top 10 American rock bands of all time. And you guys weren't in the top 10, and at some point they were listing the records, and you guys have sold over 100 million records, so you weren't in the top 10. And I wrote to the ChatGPT thing, why isn't Kiss in the top 10? And ChatGPT or whatever apologized to me and said, well, they're oftentimes discounted for their theatricality. And I said, what difference does that make
exactly
when I'm asking a business question? And ChatGPT again apologized and then slotted you guys in where you belonged.
Thank you.
But it was such a weird, I mean, we're talking about like just the fact that a machine learning AI system would discount your accomplishment is that's such a weird thing to
well,
me.
Somebody had to feed that into the.
That's what I'm trying to say is
to discount music because of theatricality. Look, when I would jump up in the air or slide across the stage, that's considered some sort of like kitschy showmanship. That's not credible. But there are other people who do it who are great, consummate showmen.
They'll use a stick on one person and then the next person somehow that's an attribute.
Yeah. So where were we?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. We were talking about survival.
Yeah.
So people were listening with their eyes and didn't like what they were seeing. So even though Creatures is a great album as far as I'm concerned. And even on that album, I had said to Gene, we should take off the makeup. And we didn't. And the album did not do well. And then we did take it off. And understandably, it was much more difficult for him to take off the makeup. And we did it for Lick It Up.
Why was it more difficult for him?
Because his face and that persona really is the visual face of the band.
I see.
There's just no denying that,
Yeah, like if the Stones is the lips and the tongue,
Gene's
makeup and the
with
tongue.
the hair.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
When I saw it, I went, wow, okay. I can't top that. So,
You were there.
Yeah. So it was much tougher for him because what I've always done has been basically me, me as a performer.
Yeah.
So,
did you guys unmask on MTV? Wasn't
yes.
the thing?
Yes.
I was watching live, so I remember that much.
Which is peculiar in itself because there were two guys who had not been in the band all the time.
Right.
So, to have the guitar player who had played on one album,
yeah,
suddenly taking off his makeup. But so we took off the makeup, and lo and behold, the Lick It Up album did.
That was huge.
Yeah, and
the songs have really aged well, I think, too.
Those are good songs. Those are
Heaven's on Fire, Lick It Up, right?
Heaven's on Fire is on Animalize. On the next
that
album.
That period, I think, is more fondly remembered than I would have imagined at the time.
Interestingly, there are people who were introduced to the band through those albums.
Yeah.
And hey, Max Martin grew up on those albums.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was I think for OG fans it was a tough time, and because you guys were sort of generally lumped in with the hair metal scene, and as you know, the grunge thing was very much a reaction against hair metal. The ballads being the number one offender.
Well, everybody had to have a power. It's a ballad, but it's a power ballad.
But I think about 800 of those MTV basically launched the grunge revolution. It was a revenge play because we were just like, we can't handle any more ballads.
The pendulum swung.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, we had our moments.
I guess, sorry to interrupt, but I think, because I don't want to skip past that period, because I think it's a really strong musical period. Something about taking off the makeup. It's something about the band being reinvigorated with the public.
Yeah.
A lot of great music came out of that period.
Yeah, we certainly weren't leading the parade, but we were.
But can I make a musical point too?
Sure.
My memory of it at the time was you guys were getting in behind the shifting trend.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually went back and listened to the music in the last 5 years, because I did this thing where I went through and listened to your whole catalog in a row. I do these weird things where I just want to listen to everything in a row, because I end up changing my perceptions about things, because sometimes your perception at the time is actually inaccurate, which is weird because you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was you guys had a lot more to do with more people in the hair metal scene were ripping you off than I thought at the time. So I didn't, even though at the time my perception was you were following, I actually think you had a lot more to do with it.
Well, yeah, certainly a lot of those bands had listened to us.
Yeah, so I'm saying is there's more Kiss in those bands than I would have thought at the time, because I think I got caught up like everybody else, whatever was the new thing.
Yeah, I mean, the clothes got ridiculous. We looked like we got dressed in the dark in a costume store. What do you think of my feather earrings? Oh, good. Goes with your eye makeup, but yeah, it was a way for us to continue. And in a way, I wanted the band to continue. I wasn't ready. Nobody can tell me when this band is over.
Yeah.
And, I did do interviews with journalists towards the end of the makeup period where they could be so, there could be such vitriol. Somebody has joy in making you squirm.
Well, what was the source of the vitriol?
Probably anger at how long we had succeeded.
Mm.
So finally, the death knell. So how does it feel to be on the Titanic? Was like a
well, you got the last laugh on that one.
I was kind of like, I'm a human being. How could you say that? And all I could think was, nobody's going to tell me when this ends, and watch this.
Yeah.
And you have to have a reason to continue. And mine was that nobody gets to tell me when it's over.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because again, I didn't love that period at the time, and I like it a lot more now. And what I'm impressed by, because I've been around long enough to know that this isn't a simple thing to accomplish, and you could argue I have an accomplishment, is to find a whole new vein of music in an adjacent but different style that does match with the zeitgeist of the times. It really speaks to your musical ability and your songwriting ability, because in many ways you'd stripped off all the accoutrement that you were accused of using.
Yeah. There were certainly some missteps that I listen to now and go, gee, all I can say is that we committed ourselves 100% to everything we
Yeah.
did, and believed that we were doing the best we could when we did things. And some of it is pretty awful. Yeah.
I won't ask. Um, just I don't want to talk much about your musical partner, because he says enough on his own. But when you started getting into other things, like I call it like Gene with the ponytail in the movies, Gene. How would you feel about that? Did you see him as being like, remember when Keith Richards was very critical of Mick Jagger?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're in the Rolling Stones. Like, what the hell are you doing? Did you have a similar kind of
Very
reaction?
much. Very much. I felt betrayed. No secret. I felt that he was leaving me to do the heavy work, but continued to get paid. So, trying to have the best of both worlds, go off and do your own thing and have the success at any level that there was success, and the monetary compensation, which I'm not sharing in, but you're abandoning ship and you're still my partner.
I see.
So yeah, no, I felt very resentful and hurt. I didn't, I wouldn't at that time have said I was hurt. I would say I was angry, but I was hurt. Gene's my brother. He's been with me since I was 17. So that was really, that was difficult, really difficult.
Yeah.
But again, it was, well, screw it. I'm not going to let this band fall apart.
Yeah.
If it's my band in that sense, then so be it. If I got to be in the middle in a video, then let's do that. But yeah, I felt that he was selling the band short. The quality of the writing was not good. Yeah, I thought he wasn't playing fair.
I like that. This is an oversimplification, but that's the world we live in. In my mind, there's that moment when you take off the makeup for the last time, and I know it. Like recently, you did a commercial and you were in the makeup, so I'm being somewhat dramatic, but there's that moment you play the last show in the makeup. That era is over. I guess I'm asking a bit of an existential question. Like, how do you view the character that you played? And I'm not saying something as simple as, is it you? Because obviously it's an extension of you. You wouldn't have played it so well for so long. But do you see that character with affection? Do you see it with detached? I'm just curious. It's like, here's maybe the best way to say it. In later years, Charlie Chaplin spoke very fondly of the tramp character. He'd done other things and he'd been successful in doing other things. But he came to almost speak about the tramp character as if it was its own entity.
Totally. I get that. And the Star Child grew with me. The Star Child, on that last night of Madison Square Garden, was not the one who started at Madison Square Garden or in the clubs that we played in. He became who he was as I became who I was. I mean, there's a parallel path,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can separate the two. That he's very much me, but he's a separate entity, and it shows in when people would come to the show over the years. They said, I was different. Well, as I progressed or went down this road off stage, I went down another road on stage.
Yeah. Do you have any musical ambitions left?
Oh, um,
Past being custodian of this incredible thing that you two have built.
I love Soul Station. I love those people. Somehow we all came together, and it's just a blessing. I have incredible reverence for Philly soul and for Motown.
Yeah.
I grew up with that as much as I grew up with, you know, Led Zeppelin or anything like that. So um, I love doing that and want to continue doing that.
Yeah.
Um, I have no, I have no fantasies that anything I ever do is going to come close to what I did
Yeah.
or have done. But um, that's what life is about. Is that sometimes we have to leave things behind and go forward.
Would there be, might be my own version of it, but is there a desire to make a more personal music? Does that translate the way I'm asking it? Because your life for 50 years was defined by satisfying the public
Mm-hmm.
at such a high level, and it does have a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's compromise in the way people would associate compromise, but you have to take into some sort of consideration. There's an audience, and are they going to listen? Are they going to like it? Is there a, like, I'm not saying bossa nova or
Mm-hmm.
something, but is there something like a music that you would long to make that really is just for you?
Well, I mean, that's why I started doing Soul Station, was because I
What was this? This is the first song in that record. I can't remember.
first one that is
I love something.
Could It Be I'm Falling in Love? The
Okay,
Spinners.
but there's a song that you wrote.
Oh, the next one, IOI.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I arranged.
That's a cool tune.
Yeah, I arranged the horns and the strings.
That's got to be fun.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's so that's something I wanted to do, and will continue doing. Could I put a band together and strap on a guitar and do that? Yeah. All bets are off.
Do you have to almost detox from all that
I had
adrenaline?
I had to. Honestly, I put the guitar away for a long time. I needed to. I just needed to take a deep breath
I bet.
and distance myself a little.
The one thing I think people don't understand is when you're up in front of a lot of people, that's a lot of energy passing through
Mm-hmm.
your
People,
being.
yeah.
And
People
you've played for about just as many people as anybody's ever played for in the history of the planet.
Yeah. You play in front of 180,000 people.
It does something,
doesn't it? I mean, you just feel you feel this like a locomotive, or a tornado. The force from the audience is
it's indescribable, right?
it really is. Well, you don't see it, but you feel this incredible amount of energy that's just.
People will say to me, "What's it like playing in front of 80,000 people?" I'm like, it's like riding a tidal wave. I don't know. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's nothing you can describe, and any way that you described it would never do it justice.
Yeah, it's just, the words don't. I saw a quote attributed to you, but I have a feeling it's not true. So you tell me if it's accurate. But it was something along the lines of like, all I ever wanted to be was a star. Is that something? I saw somewhere where it said it came out of your mouth, and I saw nothing that said you never said that. Oh, it's almost like a line, play it again, Sam. Like it's something you never said, but it goes with the character.
Yeah, I may have said, just like play it again, Sam is kind of like a distorted version of what was actually being
Yeah.
said. Um, all I ever wanted to be, no, it's so,
Sounds
it's,
a bit Betty Davis, doesn't it?
yeah, and it's so mundane and small.
That's how I had a feeling he didn't say it, but I wanted to ask because it seemed to make this point that I was after. But I'll go at it a different way. Uh, when did you first become conscious of the concept of celebrity or fame, or was it Beatles, or was like the first time you saw it? Okay, there's a star in the heaven, and it looks like that.
Hmm. Um, I think the way I could relate to it best was probably an Elvis or something like that, where you know there's a commotion and girls are swooning and um, there's chaos. And to see him doing those steps he did on stage, so I think Elvis might be
Yeah.
the first.
What year would that have been for you?
It had to be probably 57 or
So you
so.
would have been pretty young.
Oh yeah, I loved rock and roll from the time I was a little kid, from from Elvis to Eddie Cochran to Lee Andrews and the Hearts to Dion and the Belmonts to Vito and the Elegants to the Impalas. You know, it's always been,
Yeah.
it's always been my salvation, my my oxygen.
Yeah.
It always gave me um, comfort. You know, Turandot, listening to Nessun Dorma, listening to music that just fills you up.
Yeah.
It 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 uh, it inflated me.
So I guess the last point I'm after is if you could go back in a time machine, would that little kid believe that you became that? It's a strange point to make, but you're in the rare position of you did it.
Yes, he could, but he would have no idea of the complexity or
Or the bull.
yeah, of what it means and what went into it. Um, Me back then could look and go, wow, you really became a star, or you became, whatever you are. But all the nuance of it that makes it what it is would would be lost, just like trying to tell somebody what it feels like when you feel that energy
Yeah.
from it. There are certain things in life that someone will never experience
Yeah.
and can't really comprehend.
So simple question 101, would you do it all over again?
In a heartbeat. I've beaten my body up something, you know.
You had hip
Oh
replacements?
yeah, both my rotator cuffs
Goodness.
had to be repaired. I popped my bicep tendon. I've had both my knees scoped. I had a hip replacement. I'm sure I'll need another on the other side. Yeah, everything comes with a price. Is it worth the price? Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you. God bless you.